Welcome to the TryPod, where we break down the NRL every game, every week from a punting perspective. Tonight we're going to preview round 18. We'll do a mini recap of round 17 because we don't have the regular recap shows, and it was a 0-3 reverse sweep as well. Absolute gut punch I got to cover. I'll give you round 18 best bets after about 5 minutes tonight, guys. We'll do some quick Origin selections chat. I've got the Origin teams loaded up, and then we'll go game by game through the upcoming round, of which there are 5. On a positive note, first of all, we've got the sharp shooters tips in the chamber, ready to fire. And the boys did go 3-0 last week, so well done. Padonis had Manly. Matty had Storm overs. I think he had over 28.5, and he gets 30 with some late Storm tries. And Benny Williamson had Nane at 290 to score as well. So well done to those boys and their picks. But honestly, personally for me, let's start with my results. It was a kick in the guts, 0-3. In fact, go back to round 16. My last pick was a loser there too. So I've lost 4 best bets in a row. And I don't give out a heap of tips. I'm giving out, 3, 4 average maybe per week. So to lose 4 in a row, that's half the season profit in the space of, just over a week. It puts a massive dent in the win percentage. I'll be honest, the way I look at a season as a tipster, I feel like, I'm a team or I'm a coach. And if I have a winning season, I can't complain. Anytime you can make money and have a punt, have fun, that's a good season. That's like making the finals. But a 60% winning season is like making a grand final for a tipster. And I mean, you go back 4 tips ago, we were 59%. Like you lose 4 in a row, we slide to 54%. Like that is brutal. That's has made me feel sick for the last couple of days. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. If I'm a team and my hopes of making a grand final have been severely dashed right now. So New Zealand fans, I think I know how you feel on the back of not just the loss, but the Metcalf news. That's kind of how I'm feeling right now. And what makes it worse is let's actually revisit those tips I gave out. I'm not saying they were crash hot tips a week ago, but like the 3 tips I lose, I have dogs -1.5. It's a hell of a game. It's on a knife edge. There's a chance to win on the final play, but you lose. You lose on an outstanding Cleary charge down. You don't see them every day. I mean, was it a 50-50? I'm not saying it should have won, but we lost a 50-50. I can live with that. The next day I took the Knights +5.5 first half. That's not a bad pick. They only lost by 4 for the whole game. They nearly could have won, trailing by 4 late. It's another game this year where if I just took the first half line with cash, but if I took the full game line with cash, but I took first half, we lose. I'm doing that for a reason. I feel it's a greater edge, but you risk a bad start and then covering the 80-minute line. On reflection, not the wrong side to be on. Newcastle there, considering they lost Ponga in the second half, still came back, but we lose due to the way I played it. And then the cherry on the cake. I hope you didn't all see this, guys, but the cherry on the cake had to be me having Eels, Dragons, either team 1-12. And first of all, the Eels lose that game by a millimetre because if that touchy doesn't call Addo-Carr out, Eels streak away and score, and there was no way the Dragons could have contained them. But all right, that wipes 6 off the board for Para. They're still only down 6 late. And the Eels make a line break. And ask any Eels fan, they'll be disappointed you didn't win that game. But somehow you lost 13+. Why? Because you make a line break, you're about to tie the game, and Lomax throws an intercept offload the other way, and it's 6 points for Val Holmes. And we're still all right. It's a 12-point game. But then we get kickoff, penalty, and a 14-point win on top of that. Lomax did me no favors with the boot, missed 2 of his 4 kicks as well. And a game the Dragons cling on to win, somehow win 34-20. Of course they did, just to condemn me to an 0-3 weekend, which, again, I'm not saying it should have been 3-0, but we could have easily won them all. Give me 1 and 2, and I wouldn't be crying right now. But 0-3, man, that really stings. That is the game we play, though, and you guys know how it goes. No matter how good a bet looks, it can swing against you. We've seen that in so many games this year, not even games you bet on. Maybe your team had a big lead and then everything just changed. So in the course of a season, you will lose 4 in a row at some point. 60% for the year, it's still not out of reach. And in saying that, a losing season is not out of reach either. So plenty of games to be played. I'm hyper motivated this week to bounce back before the Origin decider. I do have 3 best bets to share, so I won't make you wait any longer. I'm going in the first game of the round, Broncos Bulldogs, and I am playing the either team 1 to 12 bet again. That's on 365. It's $1.85 because without a lot of Origin superstars in this one, I don't see as big a blowout potential. I know the doggies will be bang up for this at home and want some revenge on Brisbane, but Brisbane's actually got a side and a bit of confidence off 3 straight wins that can go in and fight with the Bulldogs. I think the Bulldogs bring a similar intensity that they've just played against Penrith with, and it's going to be up to Brisbane to match it. But if Brisbane can apply themselves there, that one can actually go either way. Then I'm going Dragons under 18.5, and they play in Canberra on Saturday. And I just don't see enough points in the Dragons. I don't think the forward pack can keep up with Canberra, and there's not as much class in the outside backs, and certainly not in the halves there for St. George. The only chance the Dragons have got is make it a gritty, grinding affair where both teams score in the teens. But there's just no chance the Dragons can outscore Canberra in a track meet. And in cold conditions, I think Canberra will keep their mind on the job after being made to sweat late in the last couple of wins. So I like Dragons under 3 converted tries there. Or 3 converted tries would be 18 points. So even that would still win as well. And then I'm actually playing Melbourne unders 2 on Saturday night. And that is up in Townsville, under 30.5 at $1.80 on 365. The previous Dragons bet, by the way, is on Sportsbet, if I didn't say, under 18.5. And again, Melbourne's missing 5 Origin players plus Farlongo. Yes, North Queensland's without 4 of their best 2, but the fact that both are missing stars, I feel like the execution's not going to be perfect. I think that if North Queensland can turn up and play with effort, that they can actually keep that one a bit closer. Of course, Melbourne should have the class. That's a double-digit line in an Origin-affected week on the road. I sort of lean to the Cowboys and think I just don't think anybody's going to be razor sharp this weekend. So I think we've got a few points to play with there with Storm team total unders. Now, I've still got the round 17 scores on the screen. So, let's just put a bow on that. Panthers 8-6 over the Dogs. What a month of footy the Panthers have had. No one can write them off in their aim to win a 5th straight title. And teams like the Bulldogs might really regret not winning a game in the regular season against Penrith if they've got to meet them again in the finals. Manly, much needed win. Raiders just keep winning ugly, but they won't mind. They are top of the ladder right now and keep getting the 2 points. Brisbane's had a bit of a resurgence, haven't they? And that's now 3 in a row. Awful day for New Zealand. Not just losing the game, where it was probably a little bit closer than a 14-point margin as well, but you lose Metcalf having his career season, and on the back of losing Barnett a few weeks ago. That's just not fair. And as a Finns fan, I can relate to sort of your most important players, some of your most important players being out for the season when you've actually got a squad that is capable of doing some great things. So, as I say, I think I can relate a lot to Warriors fans this week in terms of just copping a sucker punch from round 17. Dragons, a bit like Manly. Mid-table, I think they'll be on the outside looking in, but the win keeps them interested. My Finns, I was very proud as they put up a 50-burger against Souths. And again, the injuries have not caught up to the Dolphins yet. We'll talk about it more as we move forward. But I do think the fatigue caught up to Souths. They had a gauntlet to go through. I mean, I'll just remind you, in the last 5 weeks, in fact, all within the month of June, the Rabbitohs played Storm, Bulldogs, Warriors, Raiders, and Dolphins. Arguably the 5 form teams of the comp in 5 straight weeks in June, and the Bunnies lost all 5 of them. Then you had Storm Sharks. It was a little closer than the final score as well, but a strong serve of revenge dealt by Melbourne at home, who are so hard to beat, and Cronulla continued to splutter. The Titans, it's not on my screen, but the Titans are a mess, as you know. Went down by 6 points at home to the Cowboys. You can say the Cowboys, a little bit like Dragons and Manly, continue to hang around. Let's talk Origin selections, guys. As always, I really appreciate your company and your comments, and I'll put as many up on the screen as I can and respond to a few as well. So we'll do a preview Sunday or Monday, so I'm not going to deep dive this, right? But we had Kalyn Ponga injured on Friday. I'd already speculated whether or not he would be the best option for Queensland at fullback. So when Ponga was out, we'll never know if Billy would have picked him anyway. It meant you had two choices. You're either going to slide the hammer to one. He's in scorching form, had 4 tries Saturday night in his 100th game. And then you just find another centre or winger because Val Holmes can play either. And that was option one. Or option two was a straight swap, Ponga out, Walsh in. Brisbane have looked a lot better in recent weeks with Walsh being back from that knee injury. He was a big part of the team in the 2023 series win. Don't forget, Walsh was in New South Wales heads in game 1 last year. New South Wales, that's ultimately what leads to Swali probably taking his head off. New South Wales really wanted to target Walsh. He was the number one man that the Blues wanted to stop just a year ago. And that Billy and Walshy have a great relationship as well. So I thought that would be the direction Queensland would go there. But the extra complication, of course, being Walsh is managing that knee and has been visibly in pain and restricted in games. Let me know who you would have selected in this case. Of course, let's not ignore the fact that there is nobody more qualified on the planet to pick the starting fullback for Queensland than Billy Slater himself. So I'm not here to doubt Billy. Hammer is one of the form players in the world right now, and moving the Hammer to fullback allows him to impact the game even more than he can from centre or wing. So I do appreciate that part. However, to me, the biggest shock is just that Murray Taulagi, now that he's fit, could not get into this team. As harsh as it would have been, I would have had Taulagi in there ahead of Toya, and then you could have shifted Hammer into the centres, because I just feel like you've got to be able to match up against Latrell Mitchell and Stephen Crichton. So to me, I would have brought Taulagi in and Reece Walsh. I thought that Queensland looked better with Holmes moved to centre than what he offered on the wing in game 1, and now we've moved Holmes back out to the wing. So I'm just questioning that. And all due respect to Shibasaki, if he plays well in the decider and Queensland win, then I'll be happy to say that's an amazing story. But at this point, when it's just the team being picked, I don't care if it's an amazing story. All I care about is, has Queensland picked the best possible team? And I've got big question marks on that. I'm a big believer, generally in sport, you want to make decisions that your opponent wouldn't want you to do. And I just feel like, tell me if I'm wrong, Blues fans, but New South Wales doesn't want Walsh back there. They don't want Hammer, another outside back they've got to contend with. New South Wales has to be looking at Latrell and Critter in the centres matched up against Toya and Shibasaki, and must have eyes like dinner plates, honestly. And, we'll get more into that in the game preview and anytime try scorers and the rest of it. Big Papa in, personally, I would stick with Mo. I don't want to penalise players as much for club form, because I feel like one prop doesn't really determine whether a team is bottom 4 or top 4. If you swapped Mo and Papa, Canberra's still top 4 and the Titans are still bottom 4. You know what I mean? And I actually think sometimes picking players from struggling squads gives them an energy lift, because now they're playing by far the most meaningful game of their year. And if you weren't going to pick Fotuaika, I would give Big Red a crack. I do worry about Papali's speed at this point in his career, but I do think that Billy has picked his team specifically with the style of game that he predicts in mind, and there'll be less penalties in this game, which means teams will slow the ruck more. Papali's got power, presence, and experience. I respect it. For New South Wales, I also respect, and I'll bring their team up, and they haven't changed from game 2. And I respect Laurie's resistance to change anything up. After a loss, everyone wants someone to blame, but it was a 2-point game, including missing 3 conversions, losing the penalty count 8-0 in the first half. The Blues have the better squad. Yes, if it was me, I'm picking Kalamatangi in there. I would have had him in over probably Max King, and others would probably easily swap him out for Yuto Kamanu. I will say Kiraz is slightly a curious 18th man decision, but you can somewhat say that about Walsh. his knee's right or it isn't. And on that note, since we've talked about TUES, Walsh, who are Bulldogs and Broncos respectively, those sides meet in the opening game of round 18. So once again, reminder, if you are an 18th man, you are not able to play in round 18. So that leads us into Friday night. No Thursday night footy. I'll bring up your comments in a second just regarding Origin, but I'll also put that game up on the screen, the first one. Broncos, Bulldogs, you can basically see. Yeah, you can see basically the starting lineups there. May says they consider Murray, but the doctor said he's not fit after round 16. Is that right? Have I got it wrong there? But Taulungi's playing this weekend, so I still would have had him in the team for Queensland. That's a guy that's played, at all levels of the game and with a lot more experience as opposed to the experience that's in the three-quarter line. Undertaker will happily take all of Walsh's errors. Like, there certainly is some truth to that Walsh is not the perfect player, and some think he's not the same player since 2023. But you also have to pick players that are going to help you generate points in a game where there may not be many, in my opinion. I don't know. I feel like Blues fans would probably be happier with the squad that Billy has picked. Pete says Billy not picking Walsh, that's what New South Wales would want. See, I agree with that. Undertaker, Ash Klein's photo should have appeared for the Queensland team photo. Still not quite over game 2. But let's jump into game 1 of round 18. I know Undertaker was with me on the Bulldogs when they played Brisbane last time. We both got it that handed to us. I believe Undertaker's best bet this week is on this game too. Let me set the table for it first of all, though. So we've got Bulldogs minus 5.5 point favourites at a core. And your Doggies fans had to be relieved to see Burton was not in the reserves for the Blues, despite the fact that, wouldn't we all agree Burton kind of is the perfect 18th man? Because if you lose a forward and it's like it's from foul play or multiple HIAs, you lose one or two forwards in a game, you always have forward cover on the bench. But what you don't have is someone who specifically covers halves. So I feel like you always need your 18th man to be able to play, some combination of 6, 7, 9, because usually you've got outside backs that can all cover for each other or slot someone to fullback. Burton, of course, even gives you a high quality center if you need it. Whereas TUES, what happens if there's foul play and like a Nathan Cleary is ruled out? I suppose you're gonna be going Connor Watson or something into the half. So it is curious. And then a slap to the face for Bulldogs fans that it's a Bulldog anyway in TUES, who is picked at 18th man. So 18th man curse strikes again for Doggies fans. That means Wilson's on the wing, Tuala is in at centre, Birdo plays 6, Sexton remains 7, Galvin is in at 14. Hughes and Hayes are the starting props because Saluka Fafita got a concussion last game. That didn't help the best bet either when Saluka Fafita was out, a couple minutes into the game. And the Doggies, since signing Galvin, have gone into all these games with light benches. They don't have as much cover, certainly not for losing a key middle for the entirety of the game. Brisbane lose their main middlemen, Payne, Haas, and Carrigan, of course, but then additionally, Shibasaki and Walsh, as I've mentioned. Future Finn, Selwyn Cobbo is back in the team, though, and plays his preferred position, fullback. Mariner into the centres. That's pretty good cover for Brisbane to bring in Cobbo and Mariner. Willison is starting at prop. Ben Hunt's still a week away, so it's Pakes at 9, Walters at 14, Smoothie at 16. And I mentioned it's a rematch of the game at Suncorp, where my best bet on that occasion was Dogs minus 3.5. I believe the halftime score was Brisbane 36-0 or 34-0 in the rain. And no doubt the Dogs remember that all too well as well. Canterbury are coming in off that tough loss to Penrith we covered. Brisbane have won 3 in a row, which means we're seeing that Brisbane is still showing a bit of fight and has a bit to offer this season. And I can't rule the Broncos out. You've got it there on your screen. Like 1 to 7, I would say Brisbane's got the better of it with the outside backs and your halves, Mam and Reynolds, as good as Burton and Sexton have gone this year. What the Dogs do lack, though, and both sides are missing their front rows, but the Dogs, what the Dogs lack in middles is made up for in line speed, and these classy edges. Kickout and Presto are going to terrorize the Broncos all night in this one. And I expect that the Bulldogs can carry in the intensity and the defense from the Penrith game straight into this one, given the opponent and given that they're trying to serve up some revenge. So then what it comes down to is, can Brisbane match that intensity? And that can be hard when your opponent is potentially better than you and you've already blown out that team once this year. So they really want to sort of even the ledger. I give the edge to the Dogs interchange as well. So I am convinced Canterbury are the better team, and at home, that line being -5.5 is fair. And I know that, speaking of Matty, I believe he tipped it early. So let me know, Undertaker, in the comments, did you tip it at Pick'em? Was Canterbury a slight favourite a few days ago? You know, I feel like the bookies got that one a little wrong with their opener. And I'm happy to play 1 to 12 here, because even though you do get games that swing violently, and we saw it on Saturday night, the worst thing that can possibly happen to a 1 to 12 bet is you get a game that could not have been more tight and on more of a knife edge, like Parramatta within a millimetre of winning and yet losing by 14. I understand that that's just a risk you take with this either 1 to 12 bet, but I can't see the Doggies being blown away again. So then it just comes back down to, can Brisbane stick in this one? And I believe Brisbane's got that belief back, has the confidence, and have the game breakers to keep this game very close and give Brisbane a very live chance of an upset as well. So I've gone either 1 to 12 at $1.85 on 365. I'll put some more comments on the screen, but also keen to play Matty's read on this. Now, I believe he played Dogs early, but now the line's shifted 5.5. Interested to see which angle he likes best.
G'day guys, Matty here, 8-7 on the season. I've got to get it going on the back end of the year, try and get that record a bit better. Bet of the week, I did lay 2.5 points with the Dogs earlier in the week on the TryPod group, but now that's gone to 5.5. I'm going to just play the Broncos team total under 18.5, $1.87 on Sportsbet. Look, the Dogs have been fuming since being embarrassed for the only time this year up at Suncorp. The Broncos hammered them that game. I think they got revenge on their mind, and they're a bit weak in themselves, but the Broncos without Carrigan, Haas, Walsh and Shibasaki, they're missing a bit too much for me. It's still going to be a really good Dogs defense despite missing a few. So win or lose, I don't think the Broncos get over 18 points. That's my play of the week. Good luck.
So Matty now liking the under there. Some more comments coming through. Hammer at fullback is scarier. Gets no clean ball in the centres with Critter there. So, you know, if Hammer goes out and is man of the match in game 3 or just has an outstanding game, then that's going to vindicate Billy on its own. Colt, regarding the Bulldogs, Galvin destabilises the team when he comes on. Not sure where he fits in. Broncos could take advantage of that. I do agree with that to some degree. I think the Bulldogs had the lead before Galvin comes on. That's not really his fault that there's a charge down, although people did point out, well, Galvin was the one playing the ball. So therefore you knew there was only one kicking threat in Burton. It took off Reid Marnie, who was having a strong game. I've mentioned before the fact that that team on the weekend, I think, had Kurt Mann, Bailey Hayward, and Galvin all on the bench, if not Moran as well. Like, so you don't have a big bench, which is going to hurt you if you do actually lose a prop. So how the Bulldogs utilize Galvin is another issue that, you know, they're still trying to work through, because there's more upside if you can integrate Galvin. But I don't know if they should just bite the bullet and start playing him at 7, because they've already sort of signified their intention to do that. But the problem for the Bulldogs, and I guess it's a good problem to have, is that Sexton is playing too well to allow them to drop him, basically. So that definitely adds an extra layer of intrigue into this one. Anthony mentions Kiraz over Burton is Toto cover, and Kiraz is a weapon. Look, no question about how good Kiraz is. I suppose I would have Kiraz in my squad, and Kiraz can play for Toto if Toto's injured. But are you going to pick an 18th man just because your winger is playing with an injury? I still feel like 18th man I prefer if they cover my spine positions. This is sort of the point I'm making. Like, even if Toto got injured in game 3 and Burton was your 18th man and you were able to activate him, you could slot Burton into your back line and you could obviously shift. It would probably be Crichton out to a wing or whatever. He's still going to do a good job there. So still a little bit curious to me. I do just wonder if Laurie actually felt bad to pick Burton yet again. And it is a big game coming up for the Bulldogs. But as I said before, he did pick a dog anyway. Ryan says, dogs off a home loss. Revenge angle. It's dogs or pass for me. I understand that. Ryan also likes old unders. Common cyclone conditions help the tight bet. So I definitely wouldn't mind seeing a bit of rain pour down in this one. Colt, like your best bet, but a very tough match to pick. And Anthony, don't forget Bulldogs played their grand final last week. Took a huge mental and physical toll. Like, that's a fair point as well. You get a full 8 days rolling into this one, which is a couple of extra days turnaround over Brisbane, and you're at home. And I actually think the Dogs took a lot of confidence out of that game because it was the 4-time champs and you went toe-to-toe. But if the Bulldogs do fall a little flat this week, then it would be probably fair to say that that was such a high-intensity game that the squad couldn't recapture that again. I appreciate that perspective. Let's move to Saturday. It's Raiders Dragons. My best bet is St. George team total under 18.5, which was, got it here. I believe that one was $1.80 on Sportsbet. When I get a chance, I'll put those best bets up on the screen again. So the line is 11.5 Raiders favourites at GIO. Papa and Huddy Young are out for Sticky's ladder leaders, who are into $1.80 for the minor prem. Shout out Undertaker again. The losses sustained by St. George last week included Stewart, Leilua, Lawson, and Couchman, in addition to Val Holmes being on rep duty. Canberra have played 2 really similar games since the bye. They've been about 10-point favourites against the Tigers and the Knights. The Raiders got out to a 3-try lead in both of those occasions, only to seemingly switch off and sweat the final 15 minutes, but hang on and win nonetheless. The Dragons were desperate last weekend, and I had no problem with St. George eking out the win. It's just the fact they won by 14 that really hurt me, as I've covered. I can't see St. George getting too close this weekend. The Raiders are on a roll. I don't see Flanagan and King Tongia carving this Canberra side up, and you feel like you probably need at least 3, if not 4 tries to really be in this game. It's going to be cold. I think Canberra's forwards have the ability to crush the Dragons pack. The reason I've played St. George unders is because the Raiders, having relinquished some of those leads, I can actually see a heightened focus on closing out a result, not letting the Dragons get any cheap points in the second half. And I like the St. George unders a little more than the line. I also considered just minus 10.5 at $1.90 because I think the Dragons will try to make an all-in effort to muck up the game, make it ugly, make it gritty. The type of game where somebody wins 16-14 is the only real style of game I can see St. George sneaking out of there as a winner with, but much more likely I think Canberra cruise, and in those circumstances I don't think St. George is going to get into the 20s. Let me know how you see it, guys. Next up is in North Queensland, and I got a best bet on that one as well. Another team total under. This time it's Melbourne Storm under 30.5 at $1.80 on 365. But it's the Storm who are 10.5-point favourites against the Cowboys. And it's another recent rematch. These sides met less than a month ago at Amy. And I think the line was right around the same. And I believe we laid that one and had a successful best bet. Although it was a competitive game for periods. The Cowboys just couldn't crack Melbourne's line when given some bulk possession. North Queensland without their origin quartet, you can see missing from the Cowboys lineup. Duffy is in at halfback. Melbourne missed 5 to the decider in addition to the injury of Falongo. That's the main reason why I'll be fading the Storm team total. But you still got some frightening players there on top of Pappenhausen. Wishart is at 6, Garlick at 9, Jonah Pezzett into the team at 14. And Melbourne can win against anybody, even when they play below their best and even when they are missing some of their best for sure. And I've got a Cowboys team that are very hard to trust. And while the Cowboys put the right foot forward last week, was that just because it was against the hapless Titans? And are the Cowboys still going terribly because they've been blown out a couple of games prior, obviously by Dolphins and Roosters prior to last week? And you've still got Jerome Hughes in there as well in the halves. Like, that does appear to be the difference in this game, is Wishart and Hughes in the halves against Duffy and Clifford. Storm have stronger forwards as well, a level above North Queensland, and more depth too that comes through from the bench. There might not be a home advantage in terms of the climate at this time of year, but you've still got to factor in the travel for Melbourne, the home fans. That counts for something in the Cowboys' favour. And I really think, and it gets back to a theme that I've covered a couple of times and will continue to cover this round, that when you're missing a bit of class, I just think even if you do create that opportunity, you're just not going to ice as many. So I don't like fading this Storm attack, but I think this might be the week to do it with 5 key men missing. If the Cowboys don't turn up, which has happened on several occasions this season, then the Storm will still score over 30 points. But I'm betting on North Queensland giving a good account of themselves in this one and can actually make a game of this with the right mindset. So I've played the Storm total under. I've got a couple of best bets being sent through from Benny and Padonis, and both are on this game. One's a very short clip, one's a long clip. Let's listen to Benny. I think he's got a try score first.
TryPod fam, as always, thanks to the lads for having me on. Good to be back in the winner's circle last week, picking up a hit on Nanite, $2.90. Nothing crazy this week, short week. We're going to go with Grant Anderson at $1.80 on Bet365. He's got an 86% strike rate on the wing this year, 5 from 6. Cowboys have conceded left wingers in 9 out of 14 games. Don't need to overthink it. Lock him in.
So Benny is picking a Storm player to score, but with under 30.5, there's more than enough wiggle room for us both. And Padonis, I'm hoping that he's also liking the Cowboys in some capacity. Let's find out.
G'day guys, Padonis here. Hope you're all safe and well. We cashed Manly last week, taking the overall record to 11-5 on the TryPod Live, looking to continue that in an Origin-affected round, and we're going to Townsville. I like the Cowboys at plus 10.5 at $1.91 on Bet365. Put simply, I just think the spread is a little bit too big. I had this closer to 6.5 or 7. I know that both players are missing their best sides, and the Cowboys probably feel it a bit more than Melbourne do because they've proven in the past that doesn't matter who steps in for the Storm, that jersey just provides something different. But I think Peyton's proven that he can do the same thing at certain times. I think back to last year's game against the Roosters where they won as a 14-point underdog. We took this same bet only 3 weeks ago against the Dolphins. It didn't really work out for us on that occasion, but I'm not going to be scared off by it. I think the Cowboys can hang in this one and mix it with the Storm. You look at the outside backs for Melbourne, they are depleted too, with Farlongo picking up an injury on the weekend, still missing Howarth and also missing Warbrick there. So I think the Cowboys are going to have an edge in that department. They're going to need guys like Drinkwater to really stand up and show that he can be one of the best players on the field when he's fit and healthy, and I think that's the case here. And what I also like is the fact that these two sides only played a short month ago down in Amy Park. So I like Peyton to make some adjustments in such a shorter window. And let's not forget Craig Bellamy helping out the New South Wales team. How much involvement has he had with the Melbourne prep this week? I'm not too sure. I just think the game means a whole lot more for the Cowboys than it does Melbourne with that separation from the rest of the chasing pack in the top 4. So I'd like the Cows to hang in this one. Potentially could win, but 10.5, too big. Good luck, gamble responsibly.
Love some of those extra factors Padonis added there. Bellamy, obviously looking ahead to the decider. And, of course, you've got these Origin players, Munster, Grant, Liero, Coates. These are players that definitely impact the firepower that Melbourne goes into these matches with and the amount of points production, right? But then you forget that Warbrick's been out long-term and Howarth has had injuries and is out again and far longer. So it's like, it's arguably sort of 7 or 8 of their best weapons unavailable in this one. And we're still not saying that they won't win the game comfortably, but maybe, they're not going to be the full complement there, which is why I like Melbourne under, because I sort of figure if Melbourne scores over 30, I don't know if the Cowboys will come within 10 of them. But again, the Cowboys are that type of team that you can't trust the defense, but they can also get hot with the likes of Drinkwater in there. So I also definitely considered the plus line with North Queensland. If I could have got a 12, I would have taken it. I went the total, but Honest went the line. Hopefully we can both win. Melbourne can win the game something like 24-16. Comment there. Could the scheduling get any worse? Melbourne have only played 2 other games since they last played the Cows. Cole, to be honest, Cowboys nearly folded up against my Titans, and we are at a low. Cowboys, I don't think they're going well. If it was against any other team, they would have lost. Like, that's what you do have to remember sometimes, and is the form line of a team may have looked good, but who did they play against for sure? Let's move to Sunday. It's Roosters Tigers at Allianz. I've got it on the screen there. Tigers are 12.5-point underdogs. The Tricolours lose 5 players to Origin themselves. Plus, Wong is also out. You've still got Teddy, you got Nwanga and Tuasa and the centres. Savala's been a revelation. He pairs in the halves with Smith. Makatoa is going to start at prop for Ketty. Partners are returning Egan in the Egan Butcher, I should say, in the second row. Blake Steep at 13. The Tigers lose Luai. He didn't play last week because it was a late withdrawal, but they've lost him again, of course, because of Origin. So Dewey and Fainu are in the halves. Mason suspended. So with Buller out with a long-term injury, Taruva is going to get a start at fullback. Coruscant has a concussion. So the Tigers need a hooker in this one. And it's just a shame that the Tigers don't have like a gun, up-and-coming player who could play hooker. You know that guy, who's that guy that Eels just signed? Talon De Silva. If only the Tigers had a player like him, that would be an outstanding option to slot in at 9. But alas, it's Tristan Hope instead. And the West Tigers have lost 6 in a row. Roosters rolled the Cowboys before enjoying a bye last week. In terms of team chemistry, these sides are sort of poles apart. Maybe I should just be playing Roosters 13 plus on that alone, because the Chooks look like a side not only being fresh off a bye, but ready to make a late season surge. And West, it's the opposite. It's sort of in a bit of dismay without key leaders that in tough games, those are the players that you look to step up and be counted and to turn the tide in games. And there's not many of those available this week for West. But the reason I haven't played this game is I do think a 12.5-point line is a bit Blake Steep, to be honest, when you have 5 Origin players missing. Like, you look at that Roosters lineup, and it's even more apparent when you get into the interchange that the depth is still being severely tested for the Roosters. And I don't doubt Coach Robbo. But the theme you might have noticed this week is I don't think all these big favourites are going to have it all their own way and they're all going to fire on all cylinders, given you are taking a lot of key personnel out of these teams. Doesn't mean that they won't have the chemistry to still put in a great effort, but I just don't see everybody sort of lighting it up this week. And I think that allows these games to be a little bit sloppier and a little bit more of a test of will rather than skill. So I don't have faith in the Tigers. That's why I probably haven't played the plus 12.5, because I don't know if the full focus is there. And I've sort of was worried about West getting no rewards for effort with a lot of close losses, which is what made West a great team to fade last week. And Padonis found that one there, and I should have. I had my sort of some doubts about Manly, but you saw what happened. All those falling short sort of caught up with the Tigers eventually, and you start to wonder where this team's going and what Benji's going to be able to do and how much longer Benji's going to last, to be honest, coming off another wooden spoon. And if they lose another game like this, they're going to be in the wooden spoon hunt yet again. I mean, I think we had a spoon bowl last year, did we not? And round 27, I've already checked the schedule, it's Tigers Titans. You know, it wouldn't be crazy if that was for some cutlery in a few weeks. So having said all that, I think a line around 12 feels right. It will be a bigger win if the Tigers' attitudes are off. But in saying all that, there's still plenty of capable first graders in West team that actually makes them able to cover this line too, if they can bring in the effort that they did in some of those tight losses, like the the Panthers loss, the Raiders loss. We have seen effort put in there, and that's about all the Tigers can ask for. Colt saying, agree, lack of cohesion for teams can be scrappy and error ridden. That's the reason why I've gone unders or for a couple of sides, and not laying the points with any of these favourites this weekend, and that includes Manly. Although Manly are not a team that you can give the excuse for having any Origin disruption, because Manly have 0 Origin representatives. Coming into this game, 9th, while Souths are 16th on the ladder. That's why Souths are 9.5-point underdogs at 4 Pines. And I mentioned this before, right? The murderer's row of opponents for Bennett's men, arguably the toughest month of fixtures anyone's ever played in the NRL regular season, right? And so you probably still question how much juice Souths have coming into this one after getting lapped at Suncorp Stadium last week. As for Manly, Turbo is in the centres again with Hopper at 1 and nobody out for Origin, as I just mentioned, while Souths only lose Latrell, but Cody Walker was also injured in the game last week and is only in the reserves. So Whiten's named at 6. Alex Johnston has been chosen at fullback. So is Jai Gray injured at the moment? Did he get injured in reserve grade? I can't remember that one. I still would have liked someone like Tyrone Munro at fullback. But Tass has moved to the wing. Johnston is at 1, at least according to team lists as it stands this Tuesday night. And Dodd on the bench too is providing some additional halves cover. So, yeah, I've got my query on the South's petrol tank, and you've got disruption there with a couple of your main men unavailable. So I wasn't really interested in playing South Sydney this week. And you've got Manly that comes in with that soft kill and a nice turnaround going Friday to Sunday, still at home, unaffected by the Rep Arena. It's a good spot for Manly. Maybe I should just be on the Seagulls here. The Undertaker says I've been asked to play second row for Manly. So maybe he's not that confident in his own team. But Souths are just stretched right now. So I don't have great confidence in Bennett's men, but there's enough tough hombres in the red and green to not ride off the Bunnies. And just as we mentioned a couple of times, like there was a couple of comments there about the Cowboys might not be going too well just because they beat the Titans. Don't assume that everything's fine for Manly just because they won last week. They did only beat the Tigers, who, it's well documented, are really struggling. And if you go back just a week before, wasn't Manly losing to the Titans, who are the worst team in the comp at the moment? So there could still be issues for Manly that were hidden a little bit by a soft opponent last week. But as I said, when Brisbane beat the Titans, sometimes you need an easy win to get your mojo back, which is why this one could go either way in terms of, yes, the line does need to be close to 10 for mine, but nothing's really swayed me strongly into a play. So I've left it alone. So that just leaves me with the 3 best bets that I've shared tonight, which is either 1 to 12 in Broncos, Bulldogs, Dragons team total under 18.5, and then Storm team total under 30.5. So my best bets will be decided Friday, Saturday. I'm desperate to get back in the winner's circle because it just really doesn't feel fair. Again, how last weekend ended up with 3 bets that were in the balance to get none of them, and that's sort of been the story of this season. And 31-26 is not a terrible record, but I can't help but think what could have been. But a lot of teams are feeling sorry for themselves right now. That's not going to get us anywhere. There's still a lot of footy to be played this year, and I'll put in plenty of effort. My team won't be giving up hope just yet. So we'll see what we can do. As always, I appreciate your thoughts. So let's continue the conversation in the comments. Appreciate a like on the video wherever you're watching this. That really helps as well. Have a great week, guys. Enjoy the footy action. And I'll see you next time for an Origin Decider preview, probably joined by a special guest or two. And I can't promise when that'll pop up. It could be anytime, sort of Sunday, Monday. So would love your company then. Until then, have a great week, guys. Lego.